Hi, I'm Kit Deslauriers, and I am visiting with everybody here today from my home in Jackson, Wyoming, Teton Village, actually. I've been a resident of Teton Village for 21 years. It's a great place to practice my craft, which is skiing, ski mountaineering. I've been a professional athlete in this realm for over 15 years, maybe 16, 17, 18, depending on what you count as professional. And I'm excited to share some stories today that for me are super meaningful because they're really about a universal lesson that I have explored through my career of skiing and ski mountaineering. And that is all about love and tuning into that, tuning into love. So I'm going to start off with answering what I think is a question that many people have. I know I've been asked this question quite a lot in my life, which is, how do I get to do what you do? Like, how do I get to be a professional athlete and turn, what I do into my livelihood? And I like to say that it's super important that you do whatever you love to do because it's what you love to do, irrespective of if you're going to ever be compensated for it or acknowledged for it. You have to do what you love to do in life because it's what you love to do. And that goes all the way back to grade school, like middle school and high school. Like, you got to get A's, not because your parents are going to give you money for A's or because you're going to get into college. You got to be a lifelong learner because it's in your best interest. And I think it's that way for whatever we do in whatever discipline. But for me, I'm talking about skiing and ski mountaineering. And it certainly was the case that I still operate at this level. But I certainly operated at this level when I was trying to basically get a job in this industry. It took me many years to get it. And part of the reason is I didn't grow up skiing. So I didn't have like a normal background of what people would look at for a ski resume. I didn't learn to ski until I was a teenager. And my background was more Nordic skiing, walking around the woods in the winter. But for me, it cultivated truly a love of being outside in winter. And eventually, and I love to ski mountaineer and climb. But then I decided when I was in my 30s, when I still didn't have it as a job, that I wanted to challenge myself to be even a better skier so that I could ski anything in the world that I wanted to, truly anything. And I decided to kind of take that next step by entering the world of competition skiing. So a little bit of my backstory of I was the first person to climb and ski the 7 summits. I ended up before that winning the World Free Skiing Tour for 2 years in 2004 and 2005. But the sidebar to that is I was 34 and 35 years old already at that point. I was married to my still husband now, Rob Deslauriers. And, but most people would be like, at that age, she should have a real job. My job was actually as a stonemason because I love it. But, they were like, oh, she should have a real job. And I kept hearing these, naysayers, and I'm a very sensitive person. And it always bothered me when people would say, that's selfish what she's doing. At this age, she should be having kids. And, it bothered me. And so I tried to process that internally and compartmentalize it. And how I wrapped my head around it was, well, hey, at least I'm not contributing to negativity in the world. So, like the idea, right? I'm not sitting in a car driving an hour and a half to a job that I hate, living in a place I hate. So I'm basically doing what I love to do. And so competing on the free skiing tour, those 2 years were amazing. I kind of wanted to quit after the first year just because I was like, well, don't you all want to, doesn't everybody want to go out on top? And what if I don't win a second time? And then I decided that was kind of despicable. If that was the reason I wasn't going to do it, then that's just not who I want to be. So I showed up the second year, and it's a point series. And so I won more definitively than the first year even. And what happened for me after that was a soul searching moment of, again, like, what do I want to do? And competitive skiing wasn't it for me. It was a means for me to keep going on my path of just loving being outside in winter and moving through my life in the snow and on skis and climbing mountains specifically. So I refocused on ski mountaineering and gave up the competitive skiing thing. And at this point, I was 35, and I embarked on a lot of more skiing. Basically, I'd say, first of all, in the Tetons, because I needed to continue to craft my hone my craft and craft my skill set. And this is a great place to do it. So climbing and skiing mountains here in my backyard in the Tetons, it is something that gives me great pleasure, because for me, I'm tapping into this like universal energy of love. I love being there. I'm super grounded and I can be who I am and interact with the other people and the decision making and the survival and the wildness of the environment and the weather and all the personal challenge of the can I do this? So at that point, I was like, okay, now it's not just about negativity. I'm not like avoiding negativity. I'm actually truly seeking like the ultimate positive. I'm doing what I super love to do at a high level. And I am now contributing, if you will, to a higher energy in the world. Not just not contributing to negative, but contributing to a higher energy. And I started to then research, well, hey, what if I could ski the 7 summits? When I landed on looking at Denali, I found that one other woman had already done it. And instead of that being like not, a negative for me, it was actually inspiring. I was like, wow, another woman has done this, so I could do it. She wasn't American, so I did get to become the first American woman and the second woman to ski from the summit of Denali. But it was like, that was my first real shift into this is actually could be inspiring for other people, in which case I can put a spin on it that it's like somewhat worthier even in the realm of uplifting energy. And I kept this project very close to heart. I did not share my bigger 7 Summits project with anybody except my husband, Rob, and my angel donor who helped me finance it, and maybe a best friend or two, not even my parents until the very end. And the reason for that was this was a project of love for me, really. Like, this is about me and what I love to do. And like back to that thing of, let's not get A's so somebody else can acknowledge us. Let's get A's so that we get A's, so we know what it feels like to do our best. And I wanted to go after this 7 Summits challenge to be the first person to climb and ski them because it was a personal project for me. So, and because I was able to, I didn't share any of that publicly while I was going for it. And Everest was the final of the 7 summits. And these lessons just kept coming at me. And we were lucky enough on our way trekking into base camp to meet with Lama Geshe, he was, rest in peace, he just passed recently. He was an amazing person, like literally a PhD level Buddhist Lama. And he gave us an audience of about 3 hours at his home in Pangboche. And he gave us many, many important lessons, like slow the prayer flags down, meaning like quiet your mind. But I think the most poignant one he did for us was that he asked a rhetorical question. Why do you wish to climb Chomolungma, meaning Everest? And his answer he gave us was, you must have the benefit of other beings at the root of the reason for whatever you do if you wish to have continued success. I'm going to say that one more time and break down the continued piece, because he was clear to say you could get lucky, but you must have the benefit of other beings at the root of the reason for whatever you do if you wish to have continued success. And with that, we went high on this mountain, right? And we were the only team climbing Everest in that post-monsoon season, because it's a very unusual time for people to climb Everest. And it's colder, the days are shorter. There's not a definitive weather window, so not this like classic week or two that we all see in the month of May where so many people summit. It was a total wilderness experience. We were hanging it out there, and it was really wonderful. I had many opportunities to think about what Lama Geshe had said, and felt this intense connection with the other people on our team, Sherpa, Westerner alike, had like no real knowledge that we were going to be successful getting up or down alive, much less skiing it. And, that feeling of like, wow, this is now not only not contributing negatively to the world, but is contributing positively. Once we would storytell, I would think, definitely would become inspiring. But now it's actually like more like we're actually like inspiring people and doing this for the benefit of other sentient beings, of other human beings, in the way that I like to just say, like, I'm there to challenge my perceptions of my limitations. And so if I can challenge other people to find their own perceptions of their limitations and push past them, like, what is their Everest, right? And so that was really, when we came back from that trip, that was the big goal. I actually wrote a book about it, about my project to climb and ski the seven summits. And it's called Higher Love, because it's really what it is all about. It's like that merging of that high place where we have our, between our eyes and our top of our head. And we've got like this third eye place here, right? And it's that's where you feel like you're at when you're up high on a mountain like that. When I came back from Everest, Rob and I had just celebrated our 6th wedding anniversary. And people had told me before that, which I also internalized negatively, that I was too selfish to have kids. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is a perfect time right now. Take a break. Let's have kids. And so we had 2 beautiful little girls. They're 11 and 13 now. And that was a big shift. And in that shift, I wondered, okay, am I going to want to even go back to places like that? And I had a really wise friend who said, well, hey, just don't, you don't need to make any decisions before you have to. You'll know when you know. And I knew when the first was 6 months old, I went back and climbed the Grand and skied it in a day with my good friend Jimmy. And I just knew that I wanted to keep going, because that is like where I am the most connected to myself, and could really be the greatest gift that I could give to my kids, to show them that although I don't do it as much as I did before becoming a parent, I still do it because it's what makes me feel super alive and full of love and full of creativity and inspiration and compassion for other human beings at a much higher level than when I don't do it. So after the second was born, I took off for the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And the reason I landed on that location was because it is like the wildest place I could go in the United States of America. It's up in the northeast corner of Alaska. So I could like nurture that feeling in myself and be super remote. It's like 300 air miles from Fairbanks and far north of the Arctic Circle. And there's very few people that live up there, just 2 different native communities, 20 million acres of wilderness, polar bears, grizzly bears, wolves, and some big mountains. And I wanted to not leave my kids for a really long time. I had this number of 3 weeks in my head for some reason was acceptable, but go have a really intense, deep immersion experience and challenge myself again. And also I'd heard, of course, about the drilling potential for the coastal plain of the Arctic Refuge. So I organized an expedition to climb the highest mountains there and then ski all the way out across the coastal plain to finish on the Beaufort Sea, which we did. We like to call it the first complete ski descent of the North Slope. But what really happened for me beyond like that obvious metric was the fact that I was able to experience this landscape that I went into without any preconceived ideas about what I would find. And I came out with a deeper level of love for a landscape than I'd ever experienced before in my life. And even though at that time my kids were like 1 and 2, and now I've been back 6 times in the last 10, 11 years, I knew from that very first time that I would bring my children there. And we did actually, when they were 5 and 6 years old, on a summer raft trip, which people thought I was crazy for, but it was really this concept of like love, this landscape where it is so pristine and intact. And for me, it's become now about advocating for its complete protection and for not having any oil and gas exploration out there, because it's so perfect, and we should be big enough people to leave some places alone. And again, then think about like, the majesty of those indigenous tribes, especially the Gwich'in people who live just on the southern border of the Arctic Refuge. They truly live a subsistence lifestyle. And who are we to alter that? And it could be our last chance as Americans to leave a different legacy than we ever have before. And so I have now joined the board of Alaska Wilderness League, and I have organized letters of athletes with Conservation Alliance and sent them to all of Congress. I've lobbied on Capitol Hill for the protection of the Arctic Refuge. I have done science up there to study the amount of glaciers that we still have left and how long it will be before they'll be gone, and what happens when these rivers increase and melt from the glaciers and then impact the migration patterns of, the porcupine caribou herd that live there. And now with the Arctic Refuge, I'm like, okay, so it's not about negativity. It's not just about positivity, not just about inspiring people, not just about, but it is still this high level of benefit for sentient beings at the root of the reason for whatever you do. And now it's also, let's motivate each other to speak up for what really matters in life, to be bold enough to take a position when there's something that you love and there's something that you care about. Now I want to share a story about a few years ago when I was getting ready to leave for one of these Arctic Refuge trips. And I got a phone call from my good friend, Jimmy Chin. And he says, well, what are you doing after you get back from the refuge? And I'm like, well, what? I'm a mom, if I'm going to go away for 3 weeks, I'm pretty much in the doghouse for several months. I'm not going anywhere. And he's, why? What do you have in mind? And he said, hey, I'd like you to come to Greenland with me. I have a commercial filming project to do. We're going to go ski. So I asked my husband, and we're all good friends because we were all on Everest together. And he said, oh, are you sure that, just tell Jimmy that I'll just wear your clothes and I'll go instead. So I took that as a yes. And I got back from the refuge and flew over to Greenland to meet them. They were already getting started on this project. And we had like classic condensed 5 days to accomplish this objective, which was kind of large scale to film for this new drone release. And we had some really high level people on our team there and not much time. And the weather was already turning a little bit to spring, summerish, and it was kind of intense. But we got it done. And a little bit on how we got it done was again about love. No surprise. We were climbing this couloir and, I knew that it wasn't going to be good. I did some pits at the bottom and wasn't that happy with the conditions, but I was like, well, it'll be safe enough. But the skiing's going to be terrible. And I don't really think this is the right one, but this is the one Jimmy wants to do. And he's drawn to it for aesthetics, which make total sense to me. And, I love climbing as much as skiing, so why not? And I love him. I love everybody on this trip. So we went forward and we climbed it, and it was a gorgeous climb. And yeah, it was a terrible ski. But then what happened the next couple of days, as we truly got to a countdown of timing left on our project, because we did not have the ski shots in the bag, was we went to a different location because our mindfulness of the area and the conditions was informing us that we needed to be higher up in the mountains, a little bit farther removed from the ocean to get snow that was less affected by those temperatures. And so we went to this slightly different location, and we got to the top, and it was late in the evening because that's when all the best images are. And it was late in the evening, and we delayed and delayed and delayed to get the best light. And I was pretty much, in addition to Jimmy, the only talent on the trip. Everybody else was filming, and it was time for me to ski. And we had like 3 drones in the air and 2 videographers on slope and 1 still photographer. And I got from the production gave me a countdown of like 15 seconds, which was absolutely terrifying. I'm used to like 3, 2, 1 dropping, right? So I was getting ready to drop in, and I heard 15, 14, 13. And about 13, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not going to go well. All of the negative thoughts were swirling in my head about what could go wrong and how we don't have chance for another one of these runs. And then when he got to 12, something just snapped. And I thought, I love where I am. And I looked around, and then I heard 11. I love what I do. And then I heard 10. I love who I'm with. And it just kept going like that. I don't even recall all the different levels of love that I inserted, but every time I heard a number, all I thought was love. And then when I got down to 1 and it was time to ski, I laid down exactly the line that I wanted to lay down and was so full of love and happiness, truly because I was connected to this universal energy, which it is for all of us. And so I want to leave people with that thought of like, do what you do because you love it. And the closer you can stay connected to that feeling of love, the more successful you'll be, the more you'll know when it's time to pivot, and the more you will be of a benefit to all other sentient beings.